Welcome to Two Millennials and Mom, where we bring you engaging conversations and respectful disagreements across the social spectrum.
Injected with the quirks of everyday life.
Curl up as we navigate the complexities of this modern world with all the humor and warmth we can muster.
We're glad you're here. Happy listening.
Okay, we have a really heavy topic today. We are talking about the death of Charlie Kirk and some of the implications of that. The murder of Charlie Kirk, I think is fair to say. So we're going to talk some about rhetoric. We will probably talk in some cases about the importance of context and the acceptance of violence that we're seeing. And we've been having a broader conversation as we prepared for this specific recording. And so you may see some cuts today where those come in. And so they're not necessarily in order, but we thought that parts of those conversations were important to share with you guys. So if you will see some cutaways, just know that that's what it was, is that those are topics that we've talked about outside of the recording that we wanted to bring to you guys today. All that being said, welcome to Two Millennials and Mom.
I'm Callie.
I'm Cole.
And I'm Mom.
Worried about this one being heavy, you guys. Not because I don't think that we can handle it or the audience can handle it, but I think it's just going to be really heavy.
It's been a heavy week.
How you can have this discussion and it not be heavy.
Yeah.
Let's kind of, not that I don't think everybody already knows this, because there's been so much publicity about who Charlie Kirk was. And I don't know who broke it to me. I think, Cole, you broke it to me. And I was like, I don't think I know who that is. And then we kind of walked through it a little bit. And I thought, oh, yeah, I've seen him, but definitely not somebody that was on my radar. In a lot of ways, was a very interesting, charismatic, talented guy.
Very passionate.
31 years old, father of two, CEO of a company that he co-founded called Turning Point USA when he was 18 years old. His goal has been to recruit 1 million students for the Trump campaign, which we might add, they say he failed at. There have been other organizations that have been offshoots of this: Turning Point Faith, the Charlie Kirk Show, Professor Watch List publication. He was a key ally of Trump and highly respected by that administration, a friend of Junior.
Don Jr.
Called one of the most prominent voices of the MAGA movement. He was also a Christian.
Very outspoken one.
Thank you. That's an outspoken Christian, which I have struggled with some of the things that I've seen him say in that capacity that just don't seem to jive with me. So I've struggled a little bit about that. And I think one of the things that has shocked me most is listening to the young people that he has recruited who have said things like, this was my first time that I felt like I belonged. What he gave me was a sense of that what I think, what my beliefs are, that they're okay, that he was their first ally. And that's devastating to me, that there are a group of people in America who are
young people, the leaders of tomorrow kind of people.
Young people in America who don't feel like they have a place. That's
ally.
That's critical to me, that so much of our population feels
Isolated.
Ostracized. And so I think that was something.
And I think that there's a lot to be said for anybody, no matter what your beliefs are, to be able to rally people around a shared idea, a shared set of belief, a shared stance. I think especially in the numbers that Charlie Kirk did, I think is impressive.
Yeah. And I would say I've seen people who are not supporters of his, but have definitely talked about that, about you cannot fault his method of persuasion or the way that he went about it. He was in the public eye. He was willing to, he sat down for an interview with Gavin Newsom, who would be considered an opponent. He was ready to debate, apparently ad nauseum, for whatever he stood for. Ezra Klein is quoted as saying he was doing politics the right way. And while there are people who disagree with that, that was somebody that's got a pretty large voice saying there are things to be admired here.
Because
Whether
it was
you-
about talking.
Yeah,
about-
whether you agree with the line of thinking or the beliefs themselves, he was open to having the conversation.
Let's talk about it. We are coming into this conversation knowing that we feel differently about a topic. Let's throw our ideas at each other and see which one makes more sense. Let's see which one comes out on top on just on a relatively small scale and on a broader scale. Let's talk about this. I'm not going to say you're not allowed to share your ideas because I don't agree with them. You can only listen to mine. But I am going to say, share with me your idea. And now I'm going to come to you and tell you where I think your idea falls short, where I think it doesn't stack up, and why mine, I believe, stacks up better or would perform better in the given circumstance, which I think is really important and should be. To me, I think that's how our society was designed.
I would say that would be a value that we established when we started this podcast, that's what our point was. It was to be able to have discussions and know that we loved each other enough that we could disagree.
Yeah, respectful disagreement. And I think in many ways what Charlie Kirk was going out to do and was doing was being vulnerable and being willing to have that discussion, to have that respectful disagreement, to have that disagreement with respect. And
Most of the time.
most of the time. You guys, we fail at that too. We all do. I think that it's really hard and it's really personal, and it becomes like that vulnerability it can become dangerous in many aspects. And I think the willingness to keep getting up and keep doing it is something that we could use more of in our society.
Yeah, the intention alone is important.
Yeah.
But here's where we're going to stand. Violence is always wrong. And Cole, I've heard you disagree with that. So maybe I need to clarify. I was going to say political violence, but I don't think you agree with that either. I think sometimes you think that there are reasons for that.
There becomes a point to me where violence may become necessary.
Is this one of them? And how do you know that? And how does a 22-year-old kid know that?
Gets to decide.
Yeah, when I think the point that I think violence becomes necessary is when you are trying to commit violence against me, and I have no other option but to defend myself with a return of equivalent violence. Never do I think that words or ideas should escalate that way. I don't think we should kill people because of their beliefs. I think we should address their beliefs or their ideas and say, this is why I think your idea or your belief is wrong.
And what I just heard you say was you should never initiate that violence.
Well, and I think violence is a last resort. There is no other option. Nothing else will ever work. Nothing else will ever have a chance. Violence is the last resort.
But
We've
again,
done
Kelly,
everything else.
who decides
I don't know
that?
who gets to decide.
Well, and I think it's even more than that, because with just that, you could rationalize assassinating someone if you have come to the conclusion in your mind that the only way to stop their message is to kill them, is to commit violence against them. And I don't think that that's enough.
Booth did to Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah. So, to me, the only way to justify violence is when someone is trying to commit violence against me. I'm not going to go and start a fight. I'm not going to pick a fight with someone. But if someone wants to come and pick a fight with me, I am going to defend myself.
So we made a point of saying that violence is not acceptable when it's convenient for your side or justified by your beliefs.
See, that's a tricky one, because we are supposed to be tolerant of other people's ideas and beliefs, But when those ideas and beliefs become, I am justified in committing violence against you, how do you be tolerant of that?
Do y'all refer to Charlie Kirk as a murder or an assassination? And is that different in your mind?
It's like, I can understand it being phrased either way, as an assassination or as a murder. For me personally, I think of it as a murder and less of an assassination. Some people are going to define assassination by the style of killing, but let's be honest, all assassinations are murders. I don't know that all murders are assassinations. I would have told you that I would reserve assassination for someone who holds power. So for us, to me, that's someone who is either been appointed or voted to hold public office. I say that, but was Martin Luther King murdered or assassinated?
They usually say it's an assassination.
Yeah. So maybe I'm off base here, but
I've just gone back and forth, not knowing which is the right word.
So I chat GPT'd it and it gave me, I did both murder, assassination, and martyrdom. So an assassination, it says the definition is a targeted killing of a prominent person, often political, religious, or cultural, usually for ideology, political, or symbolic reasons. The focus is on the act and the intent on the perpetrator. Examples might include Abraham Lincoln, JFK. Someone was silenced for what they represented. Martyrdom is when someone's death, violent or not, becomes symbolic because they are seen as dying for a cause, a belief, or a principle. Focus on the meaning attached to the death by society, supporters, or history. Example, Martin Luther King Jr. is often described not just as assassinated, but as a martyr for civil rights, which I think is interesting. The narrative becomes their death gives their cause new power, legitimacy, or inspiration, which I think in many ways could be applied to Charlie Kirk.
Say that
we'll
again.
see. The narrative becomes their death gives their cause new power, legitimacy, or inspiration. So if you've
But I
got
think this
why
all
do you think
hinges
about that?
on motive, right?
So this says the key difference between assassination versus martyrdom is the assassination is how someone is killed. Martyrdom is how their death is interpreted. The definition of murder would just be the unlawful, intentional killing of another human.
so the Oxford definition of assassinate is murder, parentheses, an important person, and a surprise attack for political or religious reasons.
So that's motive, though. You've got to have motive there, and we don't
Sure.
know motive yet.
I
So
think-
the appropriate
I
word.
think we can reasonably infer that it was for political or religious reasons. I don't think Charlie Kirk was just a random person that this guy decided to murder.
We just don't know that. What his thinking was.
I don't know what else it could be.
I mean, I understand that.
He didn't target anyone else. He killed a public figure at a public event while they were speaking for their own cause.
So were the Hoffmans assassinated?
I would say so. Under this definition, I would say yes.
Hortmans.
Thank you. The Hoffmans were injured.
Yes.
Interesting.
I was just reading an article about his wife, Erica. This says, and I was going to look, this says something about her 3.3 million followers.
She's a podcaster.
Really?
She's a podcaster. She's 36 years old. I watched her statement that she made last night. I watched it this morning.
A 16-minute one?
Yeah.
Was
I
it
talked to-
good?
I talked to Cole that I was extremely disturbed that she stated without question that he was standing next to God as a martyr, and Cole disagreed with me.
I don't even know that I disagree with you. I think
it's inappropriate to call him a church martyr. Okay, let me do it this way.
I can see where you're coming from. Like, I'm trying to find another way to contextualize this because it's according to their own belief.
which is at the discount of everyone else's belief. He was not a church leader.
I think he was. I think he was just of a different church. Okay, I'm going to say it like this, and maybe this is the wrong way to say it. I'm going to call it, for the discussion's sake, I'm going to call it the Church of Charlie. And it's not like, hey, I, Charlie, am the God kind of thing, but it's, hey, I, Charlie, am the leader of all of these principles, and I'm leading you to this specific version of Christianity. And so I think he would be considered a martyr of the Church of Charlie, if that makes sense. And that's not to diminish him or say anything. It's just, we have agreed that these are the principles in which we stand on and live by. And whatever the name of that actually is, you can call it anything you want. He's a martyr of that within that group.
Almost like the saints of Catholicism. Like, we don't really celebrate the saints as Baptists.
And I was thinking exactly that. It's like Catholic saints. But again, that's the Catholic Church determining that, not God determining that. And for you to say,
but I think that that's kind of the definition of a martyr, right? Like, it's of their beliefs.
Right. Just like suicide bombers for the Taliban are considered martyrs for Allah and within their own sect.
But that's I guess that's my whole point. You can call them martyrs for the Taliban, but they're not.
But they
in
are.
In their own eyes, they are, though.
Yeah.
You don't get to decide what
group is recognized.
Yeah.
Because what group counts.
I think this is a valid discussion because I have an idea, which is my very own idea, of what the church is supposed to be.
Right, but what it's supposed to be and what it is are
not necessarily one and the same.
Well, but then when you come in and you say something to me that's supposed to apply to that church that may not, is when my dander gets up.
But I think that also, like, in that, like what you just said, I think that what the church is and what the churches should be are two different things, but it's all based on what I think. I think the church is, what Charlie thinks the church is, what Mecca thinks the church is. All of those are totally subjective and different. And it doesn't make any one person right or wrong. It just makes them different.
But you know what? Maybe that's what bothered me about it. Because if she stands there and says, he's a martyr, he is a Christian martyr, and you have all of these people out there who are looking at him and not asking any questions about that, then it is a given that he is a Christian martyr.
What questions would you like to be asked? When you say this and no one's asking any questions, what questions might those be?
That's a great question. So, okay, maybe I'm all right with him being a martyr. He can be the martyr. We'll call him.
He doesn't have to be a martyr to you or for you.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean he's not a martyr for another group of people, because I think it's pretty evident that at this point he has been martyred for a certain group of people. But just like there are different denominations within Christianity that have slightly differing beliefs, just because, I get what you're saying, and I think that you're both right. And when I say you're both, not you and Callie, you and Erica are both right and both wrong.
That's the subjectivity of it all, right?
Yeah.
Like, depending on how you look at it, it could be either way.
The other things that she said that kind of
didn't sit well with you.
Didn't sit well is that she would take over the brand
and continue the mission. Yeah.
And continue this mission, and it would be bigger than anything
America has ever seen.
That's what martyrs do.
America's ever seen. And so it was really an amazing 16 minutes. And I understand she is the mother of 2 small children who has just been widowed violently.
Publicly.
So it was this amazing swing from grief to just this complete ballsy prediction, defiance, and then back to grief.
It isn't rage or wrath one of the stages of grief?
Probably.
And so channeling that.
Yeah.
It looks weird from the outside.
It looks weird. Yeah.
And that's not a her thing. I'm, again, not sitting here trying to shit on her. I just think that that's kind of how grief manifests. But Mom, I just looked up kind of from the Greek, the definition of martyr, and I think it was really helpful for me. Someone who suffers persecution and or death for advocating, renouncing, or refusing to renounce or advocate a religious belief or other cause as demanded by an external party. Somebody thinks differently than me, so I am going to harm them.
That's an assumption of the shooter's motive.
What other assumption might there be? What motive might there be? I don't know. Again, I'm not trying to.
Yeah, I don't know the answer here, but
my brain doesn't.
I even went to look this morning and I didn't find anything about a motive. What I saw was striking in that everybody said he was a really good kid. He made good grades. He started out in college in pre-engineering. He was in his third year of electrician apprenticeship. Nobody saw it. Nobody thought it.
Isn't that kind of how vigilante justice works? I mean,
Isn't that what?
I said, isn't that kind of how vigilante justice works? I mean, like, think a la Luigi Mangione. This is a good kid who's nice from a well-to-do family, and he's handsome and everything is fine. And he, for whatever reason, got it in his head that this was the only option, that this is what needed to be done. And so he's going to take matters into his own hand and accomplish that.
Okay, I'm going to go stand back here on my whole thing. Boys do not have brains, very good ones, until their mid to late 20s. So you've now taken a 22-year-old, sorry, Cole, gamer who has decided shooting's okay. This is going to solve something. And I don't even know that he went to, this will solve X, this will solve something.
I'm not offended because just like there are different denominations of churches, there are different denominations of gamers. Like, I get what you're saying.
My fear, Cole, is that, and you know personally that I know nothing about gaming, but I have a fear just from some research that has been referenced, not related to this in the past, that some of the violent video games, people were concerned. And I wonder if when you're blowing up or shooting people in video games, if you become anesthetized.
I think that there is a certain case to be made for that personally. Honestly, I do.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of that has to do with the
other coping mechanisms that you've learned. Or
to a degree, learned. Yeah. There is a severe lack of critical thinking skills in our society these days. And so while I do think that there is a certain desensitization to violence that stems from video games, I think that is only a piece of the formula. Because but
it's a piece.
Sure. And it may not be a piece in every formula for every situation where violence occurs. I do think it can be a piece of the formula, but in and of itself cannot be the lone cause.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that goes well beyond gaming.
Very
I really
much so.
do. I think that goes into what
TV,
especially
movies,
American society
music.
considers entertainment. Movies, music, all kinds of entertainment, podcasts. I mean, I just saw earlier this week, a friend of mine was going to the live show in Austin of the My Favorite Murder podcast. Like, that's a humongous podcast with a huge audience and a huge following. Why are we favoriting murders? And that's not to say talk shit about the women who run that show at all. But I think that it, again, lends itself to chipping away at the line between right and wrong. And I think lots of things do that. I think lots of things in our society and culture do that. I am not pointing my finger at one thing, but I think that any single one of us, whether it is the three of us sitting here or whether it's my neighbor or whether it's the person that we work with, every single one of us has something that is chipping away saying, hey, this is a little bit grayer. Let's make this a little grayer.
Yeah, I think that we are getting to a point right now where the suspension of disbelief in many of these entertainment scenarios, particularly with movies, TVs, and video games, we are losing the ability to discern what reality is.
Oh, for sure. Because everything is as real as we decided we want it to be. And again, that's so subjective. I want this to be true. I want this to be my fact, my truth, and that's enough.
Yeah, it's my truth, not the truth. I think Callie's exactly right there.
And I think that that kind of trickles up, if you will, kind of falls back on the whole participation trophy. Everybody wins. Everybody's right. Everybody's valid in every single situation, every single time. That I am not anti-equality, but I do think that we have led ourselves down a path that says everything is equal every time. And that has led us to a place where you
Reality is
have to be
indiscernible to some
accepting,
people.
yeah, of everything.
You just said something, and you're going to have to come back to it, but here's where my brain went. You said something to the effect of everyone is okay. Everyone is right. And for some reason, my brain immediately went to transgender. Are we, and I've never thought this, I've never thought this way before, because I think I've had this thing in the back of my head that you could do whatever you wanted to do. It was okay.
That's your truth.
That's your
That's your
truth.
reality.
But are we promoting it because we're accepting it?
Yes.
Enabling via empathy.
I can't remember, but I believe she said that was, is it her that said that was his favorite word?
Least
Erica.
favorite.
Least favorite?
Yeah, that's one of the things that's definitely been going around social media this week is how Charlie Kirk
Okay.
was anti-empathy. He hates the word empathy. And there's so much more context to it than what is provided because, like, Mom, if you were addicted to methamphetamine, I could have empathy for you, but that doesn't mean I have to continue to enable you to be addicted to methamphetamine. So the same applies kind of across the board. Like, I am empathetic to Luigi Mangione if he or his family was treated poorly by an insurance company. That doesn't mean that I should have empathy with him to the degree where I think it's okay for him to go and murder someone. Regardless of whether or not what that other someone was doing was right or wrong, Luigi doesn't get to be the judge, jury, and executioner. That's not how our society is intended to run.
And I think that's applicable to every single person who I'm going to call it vigilante justice, because I think that that's how they see it in their own minds in many ways. You can sit here and talk about the guy who killed Charlie Kirk. You can sit here and talk about the guy who killed Melissa Hortman. You can sit here and talk about Luigi Mangione killing Brian Thompson. You can sit here and talk about the Aurora movie theater shooter or school shooters or Sandy. Like, all of these people are justifying this in their brains, and that's wrong. And because I believe that we have become enablers via empathy, which is one of my favorite words, something that I very much believe in, empathy, not the enabling of it. But there's a downside of that too. There's a dangerous side of that too. Sitting here justifying whatever it is for the benefit of me, or what I think is the benefit. I'm going to go kill these kids at Sandy Hook because that is going to make sense in my brain. That's going to fix this. That's going to change this. That's going to make a difference.
I think that's the piece that's missing, though, Callie, is we never get to, that's why I did this.
And I think that has a lot to say about the rest of our society. The rest of our society, going back to our episode about asking why did you think that this was going to be a productive ending in your assignment, in your cause, in your event?
And maybe we're not asking why soon enough.
Yeah.
Because after someone has gone and shot up a school or shot Charlie Kirk or shot up a church or shot up a mall or a movie theater, at that point, it's too late to ask why.
Yep.
I think we start asking why immediately after that event.
Right. That's what he's saying. It's too late by then.
Or maybe we don't really start asking why. We just start projecting why.
I think that that's part of it.
I think that's part of it too. Yeah.
either we as the public are not getting that answer, and it's only the authorities who are. But go back to the Las Vegas shooting. No one ever figured out why he did that. He planned it. He scaled it.
There's a
Nobody ever
lot of
figured out
weird
why.
stuff with that one. There's a lot of weird stuff with that one.
Yeah.
But again,
But it's that, and maybe I'm asking for the logic of it. Where's the logic in deciding that shooting Charlie Kirk was going to accomplish something for you?
I think that's the result of exactly what we're talking about, is that there isn't any, but the my truth makes us think there is. Like, it's not a reasonable conclusion, but
it goes back to that thing that Dad says. You're expecting a rational response from an irrational person. And so
That's one of the things that
no matter
Isaac
the
says.
situation, you just can't sit here and say, this is why so-and-so did this. This is why they acted in this way. This is why they killed X, Y, or Z, X, Y, and Z, because there is never going to be a good, solid reason that we understand. And so I kind of go back, like you said a second ago, Mom, like, we're not asking why. And I agree, we're not. And maybe the people who are kind of processing this case logistically, legally, however you want to look at that, maybe they're not sharing that information with us. But my question immediately jumped to, do we really need it? Do we need those answers, or have we trained ourselves to want those answers, to demand those answers?
I think that's a reasonable
That's
line of
valid.
thinking there. And I think that goes right back to it's too late to ask why. Like, we should have been asking why sooner. We should have been able to identify in this person, hey, there's something irrational here. There's something off here. You're not coming to conclusions the way that you should. Why? Where is that coming from? And I think that's a really big ask. I think that's a really hard thing to do.
Yeah, especially at the size of our country with the volume of people that we have in any capacity.
Right. But I think this my truth epidemic is what I'm going to call it. This conditional empathy is a big cause for that.
Yeah, I would agree.
Unconditional empathy.
Yeah, you have to be tolerant of anyone's ideas, period.
Gotcha.
So you can't question them, or you are a phobic of some kind. You can't say,
maybe it's a demand for empathy.
Yeah, it's a demand for unconditional empathy, but it's not equally applied. Yeah, so it's
accepted.
You have to be tolerant of the people that I want you to be tolerant of, but I don't have to be tolerant of you if you think differently than me.
Well, and I think that there's a lot of stuff going on right now in the political landscape around everything that has happened with Charlie Kirk. So after, and you guys are going to call me a liberal and I don't even care. After some school shooting, all of these people come out and say, oh, thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers. And then somebody on my side gets killed, a la Charlie Kirk all of a sudden. And now I want action. I'm calling for violence. I think that this is acceptable.
I want the death penalty.
Yeah, all of those things. And I think that imbalance of expectation is really, really difficult to navigate as a society. And I think it becomes really dangerous for all of us. No matter which side you're on, it enforces or reinforces that I'm right and I'm the most important. And so my things need to be met. My needs and my justifications need to be accepted and met over everybody else's. And I happen to be in this party, and that is who's calling for this, and that is who is in power right now. So that's the best thing that there is. So I'm going to get behind this and keep pushing for that. And I'm going to say, oh, screw empathy. Empathy doesn't serve me. Empathy doesn't work for me. Empathy doesn't fit my agenda. So I'm going to call it bad now until I need it. And then I want you to give it to me.
So just to backtrack a minute, this is what Isaac wrote. He was talking about seeing a video of Kirk's daughter running to him. And he says, what are we even talking about? What deranged inclination inside of me wants to analyze his method of discourse when someone murdered him in cold blood? Why do his political views matter even one iota. But do you have to die for you to get that honor?
Martyrdom.
That your views don't matter anymore because of the tragedy?
I mean, I think that in many ways is how our society works. I mean,
Reactionary.
look at art. Totally and completely subjective. Whatever you like is great. Everything is fine. I am this fantastic artist. I do great work. And as soon as I die, it is exponentially more expensive. The scarcity of it has changed, not because I'm a worse artist, but because I'm not alive to make more. Now it matters. Now it's powerful. And I think that we have adapted that line of thinking across many, many things in our society that has become very detrimental to us. I mean, Mom, we make the joke. It has always been a joke. You're worth more based on your life insurance if your seatbelt is buckled. And it's a joke. None of us are trying to kill you or get in a wreck when you have your seatbelt on. It's a joke. But because we make the joke, I think, again, that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, the chipping away of right versus wrong, good versus evil,
The value of
in
life, even.
the value of life.
And I mean,
And we're guilty of that.
yeah, I think, Callie, our generation specifically has very much been desensitized to the value of life.
Yes.
I mean, because we make suicide jokes as a generation constantly. Oh, kill me. Kill
Yeah.
yourself.
I'm
going to go
kill
jump off a
you.
bridge.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're 100% correct.
I mean, we had entire
millennials.
websites devoted to FML.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, think about the campaign that was started within the LGBTQ community years and years ago. It had to be 20 years ago now. It gets better. We want you to value your life. We don't want you to take your life because it gets better. Please know it gets better. You had a whole group of people come out trying to remind us of that, trying to remind our generation that this isn't the end of the world. It does get better. Please don't take your own life. Please don't do this. It gets better. We promise it gets better. And the need for that, the fact that we had such a need for that because suicide rates were growing so rapidly, especially within that community, there's an issue there. There's a problem. And I think Cole is right again. Like, by the time that something has already happened, the why is too late. We should have been asking it before now. And don't get me wrong, you guys, I think that there are people who are out there asking why. I think that they're drowned out by...
we are not, though.
Yeah, I think they're drowned out by the rest of it, and it's not enough. But I think that there are people out there asking why, because it is absolutely necessary. And I think that until we as a society come together, we just had September 11th a few days ago, and it happened to be the day after Charlie Kirk was killed. All of that came out, and I remember thinking there was so much noise and direction and fodder going on about Charlie Kirk, which, again, I'm not saying is wrong, but I just remember thinking, have we already forgotten September 11th? Never forget. But this is bigger news, so we'll deal with that later. We're 24.
I think I said it to Mom earlier this week because she had a similar question. It's like, today is September 11th, but the only thing that we're seeing on the news is Charlie Kirk. And I said, well, the anniversary doesn't end in a 5 or a 0. It's not as important.
Because that's how our news cycle works. No matter how you feel about various news sources and things like that, this is the biggest story. This is what's going to get the most clicks and attention. I want to talk about this instead of what we all communally agreed to never forget. And that makes me sad. And again, that's not trying to put down Charlie Kirk or diminish his life and murder, but it made me really sad. It made me really worried for us. That was such a monumental coming together of our country. And do I think that the outcome of that was good or right? No, I don't. But still, it was a
was a unifying factor.
It was a really unifying event factor in all of us saying, oh gosh, we may disagree on things, but at the end of the day, that is not what's important.
We don't want this
We are
just
important.
because we disagree. This isn't what we want for each other. And I think as a society, we've moved away from that.
Yeah, I agree.
I think at this point, we're okay with bad things happening to people that we disagree with. And I think that's wrong.
I agree wholeheartedly. And I think that we were talking about it in another episode previously. I think that that starts from the top.
What do you mean?
I think that when Melissa Hortman was killed and her husband was killed and those other people were attacked, our current administration didn't really do much. Were flags lowered for Melissa Hortman? Were they brought to half staff? No. This guy, Charlie Kirk, also is relatively unknown in many, many circles. It is not part of the actual administration himself, and we're going to lower flags. That's a huge thing.
Over 9/11.
And
I think
again,
that's part
not,
of the division, the divisiveness that is intentionally employed by
yes.
the powers that be.
Yes. And I don't think that no matter who's in office, I don't think that they're ever going to get it 100% right.
Sure.
I don't. They can't. It's not possible. And so I'm not sitting here trying to shit on the current administration, but I do think that what the waves that they're making and that they're willing to make have an impact down the road. And I think that that is the case with every administration, with every person who's sitting in the White House. The ripple effect that you put out, you have to be really careful.
Every administration is a pretty big rock.
Yeah, a huge rock. I don't want to be president of the United States at all. Under any circumstances, I don't want to be president because I think that you have to take into consideration so much of the long game, so much of how this is going to, the ripple effect of it all.
And I think that's part of the problem is that we have gotten to the point where the administrations that exist on both sides aren't doing that.
I was just thinking about that, Boo. Are we really? I mean, I've been, Pam and I've been reading so much about Nixon, and that didn't have very much to do with long-term effects.
No, it was what can we gain right now?
Right now. Yeah.
This makes my stomach hurt.
I know. Me too.
I was intrigued by a quote. I was reading Ezra Klein's opinion in the New York Times, and then I went to the comments, and let me just say they were intriguing. But specifically, there was one from
Before we get to the comments, can we talk about that specific quote from Ezra that you sent us, just so that we can have some prior context?
Sure.
So this is from Ezra Klein's opinion piece from the New York Times, The Foundation. And this is not the entire piece. This is just an excerpt from it. But he writes, the foundation of a free society is the ability to participate in politics without fear of violence. To lose that is to risk losing everything. Charlie Kirk and his family just lost everything. As a country, we came a step closer to losing everything too. You can dislike much of what Kirk believed, and the following statement is still true. Kirk was practicing politics in exactly the right way. He was showing up to campuses and talking with anyone who would talk to him. He was one of the era's most effective practitioners of persuasion. American politics has sides. There is no use pretending it doesn't. But both sides are meant to be on the same side of a larger project. We are all, or most of us anyway, trying to maintain the viability of the American experiment. We can live with losing an election because we believe in the promise of the next election. We can live with losing an argument because we believe that there will be another argument. Political violence imperils that. Kirk and I were on different sides of most political arguments. We were on the same side of the continued possibility of American politics. And Mom, when you sent that quote to us, that excerpt, I think you really nailed it with your subject line, because it was a single word and it just said this, which was very hip of you.
Very. Who knew?
And I think Ezra is dead on with that analysis.
I think we should use a different word. Spot on.
Fair. And so, Mom, now talk to me about some of the comments that you were seeing there.
So this was by Mark Knopf in a response. And he said, I expect that nearly any assassination, even where it carries some political messenger's hand in it, is ever done by a full, sane individual. Creating a martyr of an enemy makes no clear sense. The party acting out may be forwarding a cute, but only in his own mind. Killing another human never truly does much of any useful good. A mentally healthy individual feels other means to manage the defeat of an enemy. And so I think if you go there, that it really is political violence isn't helping us. What if we gained a shooting Charlie Kirk?
Nothing. And I think that's part of the problem. And we talked about this a little bit earlier in the pre-show. If anything, it makes the issue worse. Just like that comment is saying.
It adds
It
fuel
certainly
to the
does
fire.
for the side of the shooter. I mean, even if you just go to the fact that now you have a 22-year-old accused of this who doesn't have a life anymore. And I felt the same way of the UHC shooter. You have a young man with incredible potential that has just voided his entire life.
And that's on the individual aspect. But I think it's
Yes.
also reasonable to say that you've now taken steps to delegitimize the ideas that you proclaim to represent.
Yeah. And you've given
I
the other
agree.
side this bump, this incredible bump, because now they can use the word martyr. They can tag that the other side was totally out of control and wrong. You've given them this bump of
Antagonism.
Well, I was thinking legitimacy.
I don't think it's legitimacy.
Well, I think it grants it a certain level of legitimacy because
I think it gets the air of legitimacy. I don't think it's real.
I think that's legitimate.
No pun intended.
Yeah. So it's kind of like throwing a fit when you don't get your way as a kid. So
Yes.
instead of if
I want the sugary cereal now. You can't have the sugary cereal. Well, I'm going to keep throwing a fit until you give me the sugary cereal. Okay. Oh my God. Take the sugary cereal and shut up.
Well, but I mean, that's
You've
probably not great
reinforced.
parenting.
I know,
to
but
give
you've
in.
reinforced that is a reasonable method of
Getting what you want.
existing, of getting what you want.
Right. And so, Mom, maybe I can ask you this question as a parent when we were kids. If I was to come to you and say, hey, can I go hang out at so-and-so's house? What am I more likely to get a positive reaction from? To say, hey, these are the benefits of me going over there. You don't have to feed me lunch today, and I'm going to be out of your hair. You and Dad can do whatever you want. Or if I throw myself down on the ground and start kicking and screaming, which way am I more likely to get my way?
There's
Now,
a good way
today
to make
you
your
wouldn't get the
argument.
busting that you would have gotten when you were, younger or sent to your room. Today we would just look at you and go, seriously, grow up, behave yourself.
Sure, but I mean, we're talking
But
about
you would've-
me as a kid. Which one am
Yeah.
I more likely to be successful in my attempt? It's probably approaching it with reason.
Yeah, I was going to say a reasonable argument versus a tantrum.
Yeah. I just, and here's where this conversation may have come from. We cannot, as a country, as a party, as an individual, as a group, jump on a bandwagon that says they were wrong.
That only says they were wrong.
Yeah. We can't add to fuel to that fire with our rhetoric. That's not right. We should not be adding fuel to the fire with that rhetoric. We should be taking a step back to say, what the heck happened here? Not blaming anybody until we have some facts. And we've talked about that before on this podcast. how one of the things that absolutely amazed me was a story about an older gentleman who was identified by a picture, and a Fox, I believe it was an X account, identified him and broadcast it to their thousands of subscribers. And until his daughter called him, he was in Toronto, and his daughter called him and said, "Dad, what is going on?" Because he'd been identified as the shooter within moments of the shooting.
Person of it.
A person. Well, no, I think they identified him as the shooter.
This was an illegitimate Fox Twitter account.
It was an illegitimate Fox account, but they not only identified it and sent it out to thousands of subscribers, but then people began to attack him.
Yeah.
And he wasn't anywhere close. And that was clickbait. The only purpose of that account was clickbait, is to get things riled up and things going. And we have got to stop doing that. We've got to stop with our words. Cole, you had an instance with a friend that you said, "You're the problem."
Yeah. So I want to talk about two things here, because you had mentioned this X account and how it had identified the wrong person as being the alleged shooter as clickbait.
Confidently.
Very confidently. And someone who, if you are not a savvy internet user and they just have a Fox logo and they're calling themselves a Fox X account, you may believe is legitimate without going in and finding out and actually looking and finding out that they're not. And I just really want to highlight this here. As late as yesterday, the three of us were talking about the shooter turning themselves in, and we all had heard completely different stories. We had all heard that he had turned himself in, or he had been turned in by someone else, or for whatever
By
reason,
his roommate, by his family, himself. We all had three completely different perspectives. But I think that goes beyond just, hey, one bogus X account. I think that goes beyond we as humans are creatures who are very good at making mistakes, at making errors. We are not, and especially in our news media now, we prioritize clicks and money over the truth, over reality. And so if I put this out there right now on a real Fox or MSNBC or CNN, whoever it is, New York Times, it doesn't matter. If I put this out there and it gets clicks, that doesn't make it true. That doesn't make it right or fact, whether you're a legitimate account or not. All that legitimacy is, all of that legitimacy is built by being legitimate, by being willing to go and fact check, by not putting things out preemptively, by taking a pause. You may not be the first one to break it, but you know that it's true. You verified that information first and foremost. That is what makes a legitimate news source.
Yeah.
The verifying of information.
This is what we know. This is what we don't know. And this is what we are trying to continue to find out.
Yes.
But Callie, even the director of the FBI jumped the gun on that in this case.
I think that exemplifies her.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is, I don't know that we're going to get rid of the fake Fox X accounts that are jumping to this, but there's another component of that includes the rhetoric that is just spewed instantaneously, that is inflammatory
and becoming so commonplace.
It's the left that caused this. It's the left's reasoning for doing this. But I think you'd be pretty hard pressed to find somebody who literally said, "Oh, we should go assassinate this guy on a college campus in front of 3,000 witnesses."
No, if that's as uncommon today as you might think it is. And I think that that's a really interesting lead-in to the conversation that I had with a friend this week. Because I got a text message of a picture of Charlie right after I had heard the news that said, "Eat shit, asshole." And while I don't even agree with Charlie Kirk, I was immediately furious with this friend. And I responded, "That is the problem," is what I said. That right there is exactly the problem.
And that's
You're,
the part that I'm talking about.
yeah. So here's the full message. That is the problem. You're celebrating harm coming to someone you don't agree with. That's why we still have war. That's why our country's political system is a complete and total farce. I don't even like Charlie Kirk or agree with him on most things, but I respect the fact that he stands up and speaks to people for the things that he believes in. The response that I got was, well, he was going to universities where there are so many young minds, and you have to expect that someone might do that. And I said, why?
No.
Why should he expect that? Why
I
should
don't want to
words
expect
lead to
that.
violence? That's exactly what I'm saying. Escalating from words to physical violence is the problem. I mean, that's exactly my point, is to say, if you don't like my ideas, I have to be worried about you killing me?
And again, I think that, and we've talked about this before, I think that that ball of shit starts at the top and it only gets bigger and bigger and bigger on its way down. It snowballs. You know, I saw something earlier this week. It was a recent study by political scientist James Piazza found that countries where politicians used hate speech often or extremely often experienced an average of 107.9 domestic terrorist attacks compared to just 12.5 attacks in countries where politicians rarely use such language. Republican lawmakers have largely remained silent about or defended such rhetoric, despite warnings from multiple security experts about its potential to inspire violence. And again, I do not think that any presidential administration is going to do right by everybody. I don't think that
like we talked about earlier, it's impossible.
I think it's impossible. But I think that
Well,
when you've got people in positions of power who are fanning those flames and saying, hey, that's cool. Hey, you just attacked the Capitol, but it was on my behalf. So I'm just going to go ahead and pardon all of you. It's cool. No big deal. I think that the moment that we normalize political violence
from either side.
from either side, the moment that we normalize political violence,
Legitimize political violence.
I mean, once it's unleashed, then what?
That is not a monster you can put back in its cage.
Right. We can't reel that back in. And especially when you have huge gobs of misinformation, disinformation, false information out there, people take that and run with it. We can't rein it back in.
Yeah. I do think that there is a little bit of hope, because that conversation with my friend continued. Several hours later, he sent me a bit of a white flag and asked if he said, can I call you tomorrow? And I said, yeah, of course. Just because I think you're wrong on this doesn't make you not my friend. Just because we disagree doesn't mean I don't like you anymore. That's not what this is about. And he called me the next day and we had a really long conversation about it. And he said, you were right. I shouldn't have responded that way. That was wrong. And we continued to have a conversation about it. And I think we're closer friends now than we were before. And we were already close friends.
Which is the whole point. If you don't take the time to have those conversations, and either one of you, it doesn't matter what side you're on, either one of you said, oh, he's wrong. I'm going to end his life because I disagree with him, because I think that he's wrong. That conversation isn't possible.
Or even I'm just going to cut off communication with them because we think differently.
Right.
Yeah, that's
harmful.
No progress can be made at that point.
None. And so remaining open to having conversations, to open to hearing somebody else's perspective, open to hearing and understanding somebody else's beliefs that are different from your own, only serves you better, only gives you more of an opportunity to understand, to recognize that, shoot, I may have this wrong, or I may not be totally right, or I'm not the only one important here.
What?
Yeah, there's a rampant issue with self-centeredness. And, you know, in our outline here, there is a line that says political violence is always wrong. And then there is a call to action here, really, to call out hypocrisy, to condemn violence only when it is perpetrated against your side isn't principled. It's partisan. You have to call it out on both sides. And both sides have been guilty of this, of saying it's okay if we commit acts of violence against the other side because we're right. To justify that violence with your opinion is irrational. It's extremely dangerous, but it's also irrational. And both sides on of our country, not everyone on both sides, but individuals on both sides are guilty of not only legitimizing or being accepting of said violence, of perpetrating said violence, and calling for said violence. And at no point should that ever be the rational conclusion of I can't talk to you anymore. Now I have to kill you.
Yeah. I need a break right now. I don't know. Let me go find out. There are all kinds of other options that you could put in there. I can't do this right now. Okay, cool.
Yeah. And, that's kind of been the entire deal with America acting as the world police. That's supposed to be the idea behind it, is we are going and we are standing in defense so that people don't have to worry about being persecuted for their beliefs all across the world. Now, is that what I think we've actually been doing? Maybe not. But
Not all the
I
time.
think that was the intention, and how it was justified to us to take those actions as the people who are funding it, I think is the case. And the fact that we have now moved away from that societally, even if it's just small groups or small pieces of certain factions, the fact that is becoming more common and more widely accepted is horrifying to me, that we have allowed ourselves to devolve.
It's been referred to in several things that I've read as the abyss. We're standing on the edge of the abyss.
And some of us are throwing ourselves into it.
Yeah. And I just don't think it's that far off. Think that they're, and I find myself I want to write a letter and go, why would you say that? Don't say that out loud. It's just wrong. It's just so incendiary that it just shouldn't happen.
Sitting here listening to us talk about this, it's kind of the point, because you're allowed to have those ideas. You are. But I'm also allowed to tell you that those ideas are wrong. And hopefully, by speaking to you, I can bring you to see reason on a topic like that. And I am concerned that our society is moving towards, I don't want to talk to you. You think differently than me. You believe differently than me. So there's no point.
Yeah. I think that for me, it kind of boils down to eliminating somebody who thinks differently than you doesn't make them see your side.
No, it just makes people who see their side angry at you. It just legitimizes their point even more.
And the danger of that is that if you get them riled up enough, then you have retaliation. And so it just doesn't, I just can't figure out how it works. And I know I'm asking for a sane response for something that may have its basis in insanity.
There's that, I think it's Albert Einstein who's credited with saying it. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different response is the definition of insanity. Going out and, again, no matter which side of the aisle you stand on, going out and killing everybody who disagrees with you or who thinks differently than you doesn't make any sense either. It doesn't change their minds. It doesn't further your cause. It doesn't express any of those things that you value and hold so dearly that you're willing to take someone's life for. It delegitimizes every single thought that you have and categorizes them rational thoughts while you're doing irrational things.
Well, it means that you now have to kill everyone in the world except for the people that are within your faction. And even then, you might have to kill them too.
Right.
Because they may think
option.
a little, because you and I might agree on something today, but what happens when we disagree on what color the walls should be tomorrow? Now I have to kill you.
I was just thinking, if we put 5 subjects down, the 3 of us would not agree on all 5 of those. I can't imagine that there are any 5 subjects that the 3 of us would have the same opinion on.
I mean, I'm sure we could find 5, but we'd have to cherry pick them.
I mean, but at the same time, we were talking about this the other day. No matter how many episodes of 30 Days In, 60 Days In, of various prison shows, Prison Break, like no matter how many episodes of TV I watch about somebody being in prison, I just finished a book about a woman in prison. No matter how much I absorb, I am never, ever, ever going to have the same lived experience of somebody who was in prison. No matter how much
Fingers
I
crossed.
commit myself to understanding their perspective, and even if I go and live in prison, even if I go and whether that is because I chose to or because I've committed a crime, even once I spend time in prison, my experience will still be different than someone else's who was also there, even at the same time, because of all of the rest of my life and my views and my perspective. We are never all going to be the same. I mean, we kind of, I don't want to say laugh, but utilize the fact that all of our thumbprints are different. We're all so incredibly different. That doesn't mean that we don't all still have thumbs, but they're different. They've done different tasks. They've been used different ways. They've experienced different situations. Every single one of us is different. And finding our commonalities is the only way that we even have a chance of better understanding somebody else. I can relate to this part of it. I've never experienced that, but this part I can kind of see what you're talking about. This part I can kind of see where you're coming from. Cutting their thumb off doesn't make me relate to them better.
Where do we go from here?
Somehow we have to promote universally a different kind of language response.
Conversation.
We have to change our mentality as a society.
So y'all know that we read a lot of Tangle, and he said at one point, he wrote about this week.
This is
And
Isaac.
he said,
this is Isaac Saul.
Isaac Saul. He said, truthfully, the whole thing just makes me want to quit, to coil up and get out of the arena and do something else. I expressed this feeling to our editor at large, Camille Foster, who urged me to remember that, quote, we are on the side of angels here. And I know what he means. We are doing the very thing we need to pull us back from the brink, bringing together disparate political groups, creating dialogue, exposing people to viewpoint diversity in hopes of making us all a little bit less extreme. I think that's where we have to go.
Yeah. I think
I'm not sure how to do that.
I think what Eliza?
Ezra.
I think Ezra's words were spot on. Yes, there are 2 different sides, but we have forgotten that those 2 different sides are supposed to be on the same team, working towards the same overall goal of the continued existence of the American experiment. And so calling each other names, identifying the opposition as the enemy, as traitors, as fascists, as communists, as socialists, whatever it is, using these terms. Yeah, you leftist, you libtard, you liberal. I understand that they have a different viewpoint from you, but they're not the enemy. They just see it differently than you. So talk to them and say,
stop weaponizing words.
Yeah, this is why I see it this way. Can you explain to me why you see it differently? Because, you may both see it similarly on a lot of subjects and be able to find some common ground. And you may not. But again, the end goal is the continued existence of the American experiment. There are 2 different sides, but in the long run, we're all Americans. We're supposed to be on the same side, even though the way to reach our goals may be different. The actual goals that we have may be different. The overarching goal, without the existence of the American experiment, there's no way to facilitate reaching any of those goals.
I think Ezra Klein really kind of hit the nail on the head at the end of his opinion piece. He said, "It is supposed to be an argument, not a war. It is supposed to be won with words, not ended with bullets." I wanted Kirk to be safe for his sake, but I also wanted him to be safe for mine and for the sake of our larger shared project. The same is true for Josh Shapiro, for Mark Hoffman, for Melissa Hortman, for Thompson, for Trump, for Pelosi, for Whitmer. We are all safe, or none of us are.
I think that's so valid.
It doesn't matter what side you are on. We are all safe, or none of us are. I hate this, y'all. I don't like Charlie Kirk, but I hate this. I hate that this happened to him. I hate that this happens in our country. I hate that, again, we have gone from just weaponizing words to weaponizing lives over conversation.
I think that as a goal, we need to start reaching out. Reach out to your representatives. Reach out to your friends and just say, I'm asking you and pleading with you. Remember who is not the enemy. Remember your words have you and
Carry weight.
carry weight and can be destructive. And I'm asking you to speak with integrity and with a voice that is for the better, for everyone's sake, not just for yours today.
Just because we disagree doesn't mean that we're enemies. It just means that we disagree and we have conversation that needs to be had. We can understand each other without agreeing.
And if we disagree, it just means we haven't talked enough.
I think that we're in the age of information, right? We have supercomputers in our pockets. We have endless information at our fingertips all of the time. There are so many people and so many sources out there for us to dig into and hear and listen to and disagree or agree with. I wanted to ask you guys what your world would look like if the loudest voices in it went silent.
So I think it's curious to identify who those voices would be. This is
Go ahead.
easy for me to say that one of you would be a loud voice for me because I talk to you all the time and I listen to what you have to say. And sometimes I shake my head at what you have to say. And if that voice were to be silent, there's a void. I mean, there are other people that I enjoy their, what they have to say. And we've talked about several of those people here. Brene Brown, I think, has a great following and a great message in many ways. I don't agree with everything that she says, but, there are people like that.
Well, and I think that also, you cannot agree with everything that she says, and that's okay. But there are people out there who also agree with her. Maybe not on everything, but if that voice is silenced, it leaves not only a void for you, but it leaves a void for lots of other people too. And recognizing that, again, you don't have to agree 100% with somebody for them to take up residence in your being, in your mind, to take up space, to be noise. Good, bad, right, wrong, doesn't matter. Mom, you and I talked ages ago. They haven't been blogging for years, but we used to have a blog that we read every single morning.
Every day.
Every day. Consistently. They were fantastic. Every day at 10 o'clock in the morning and 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they had a new post. And it was
You
all...
watch their family grow.
Yep. It was all fun and good. It wasn't political. It wasn't life-changing. It was, hey, this is what we're doing in our house. Hey, this is how we failed at this. Hey, this is what's going on over here. Hey, this is something that we really enjoyed. And when that was gone, when they stepped back from blogging, because it was good for them, they needed that time back. They needed to not be out in the public eye in that capacity all of the time, every day. We found ourselves starving for that content, missing it. And
It was a bright moment in our day that was gone.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that we have to be really cognizant with where those outside injections of life come into ours, whether it is about politics, whether it is about DIY and home decor, where that noise is coming from, And we have to acknowledge how that noise impacts us for the good, for the bad, for the fun, for the silly. We have to be careful about what that looks like and means. I read a book called Bad Summer People, and it wasn't that the book was bad. The writing was very good, but every single character in this fictional book was a bad person. And that manifested in me I felt gross. I felt worse. I felt yucky just by reading this book. And Mom and I had a conversation about it. I was like, I don't like reading about bad people because it has an impact on me. I don't want to be a bad person. And I have no problem with the person who wrote the book. It wasn't for me. I had to silence that in myself. And so I think, Mom, your question of where those voices come from, where that noise comes from, and recognizing it and owning it is a really, really important exercise for all of us to do, to, again, recognize what it is that we're filling our cups with. Is that truly what matters? Is that truly what we want to be filling our cups with?
I think there's another side to this that really goes very hand in hand with what you're saying right there, Callie. We talked about this a little bit yesterday as we were prepping for this episode, how when a political leader is assassinated, it creates a power vacuum within a society and is oftentimes filled with something worse than what was there. And so now you have this following of Charlie Kirk who really loved this man and loved the things that he said and what he stood for. And you had a lot of people that disagreed and didn't.
Yep.
And I can tell you one thing, there are a lot worse people out there on the internet spewing things than Charlie Kirk. Because I think that at least his intention was to do most things from the standpoint of love. And sometimes that requires tough love. And he didn't always do it that way. He wasn't always perfect in the way that he made his points. And I think he
None of
would
us
have,
are.
yeah, none of us are. And I think he was cognizant of that and would tell you. But now you have this, not only do you
Void.
have a larger following for this man, you have the following that was already there that is now furious and has a vacuum and is mad at your side because they believe that your side is responsible for this. So now what are they going to do? What content is going to fill that void? What content are they most likely to interact with when they are already enraged? But now it gives them an opportunity to fill that content void with someone who's not even attempting to do it from a place of love, from a place of compassion, from a place of respect. So you have just kicked over the anthill.
That's a great analogy.
And I want to urge the people who are listeners and followers and people who appreciate and like Charlie Kirk to be cognizant of that, because now in your rage, you can present the opportunity to do the same thing to the other side, which doesn't do anything to solve the problem. It only escalates it and makes it worse. It's just like I mentioned to the friend that I was talking about earlier. This is why we still have war. This is why we have a political system that is the way it is today, is because there seems to be no cognizance of the repercussions of the actions and the words that we speak.
The outcome.
And so I just urge everyone to be careful, to check the things that you are saying and see where those things are coming from. And I know that that's not always easy. Sometimes my tongue gets away from me. I know it, and everybody's does. But in situations like this, because of how quickly things like this have the potential to escalate, I urge you to be cautious and be mindful of how you look at this. And that's on both sides.
And again, I think that we have to take the stance, no matter the side, of condemning violence, not selectively, condemning violence across the board, de-escalate situations, have conversations. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news here, guys. A conversation is a two-way street. It is speaking and listening.
It's not about winning. This is one that I struggle with more than probably anyone. It's not about winning. It's about having the conversation. It's about understanding your counterpart better.
I'm learning some new stuff at work, and they're really harping on this one topic, this one facet of our business. And I heard it differently. I've been there for several weeks and I heard it differently. And I was like, that makes sense. You guys have all said tangentially related, similar stuff, but I didn't get it until that person said that. And had I shut down and stopped listening, decided that I had it figured out, I would have missed the point. You have to listen. You have to keep speaking.
Sometimes you have to listen to it several different times in several different ways, just like you said, for that light bulb moment. That's
Yes.
something that I run into in my industry constantly, both internally and externally, talking about kind of, I mean, sometimes it's a formula, sometimes it's an algorithm, sometimes it's just a theory or a concept, and until you hear it worded the right way, it never makes sense. And then once you hear it the right way, it clicks in your brain and you say, and then all of those other conversations that didn't make sense before fall into place, and now they make sense, and now you understand what they were really trying to get at. And that one little tidbit of extra context makes everything clearer.
Well, and I think that one of the things that is worth remembering, sometimes it's not about saying it the right way. It's about saying it at the right time.
Also true.
I can hear it now.
I was having a conversation this week with Cole, and I was struggling with trying to communicate how I felt. And he was extremely gracious with me and kept asking questions. And then finally he uttered this phrase that I don't think he thought of the power that it was going to have. But when he said it, it was like it totally flooded me. And I thought, yes, that's what I feel. That's exactly what I'm trying to communicate. It was like, thank you for clarifying that for my brain to hear it. And it was my feeling that I couldn't articulate.
Yeah.
But he finally, and we'd been talking
For a while.
15, 20 minutes at least before he said it. And it was just overwhelming how comfortable it felt and how acknowledged I felt and how much sense it made. It was only 4 or 5 words, but all of a sudden I felt, oh yeah, that's what I'm feeling. Yeah, I can go from there. It's words, y'all, but it's how they're used.
Yeah. How they're used, by whom they're used, when they're used, when you're
And how
willing
they're
to
heard.
listen to them, how they're heard. Yeah. All of it is important. I mean, and it feels to me like a lock, like a key in a lock. Not every key is going to fit. Not every key is going to unlock the lock. You have to have all of the right pieces lined up for this lock at this time in order for it to open up. And I think our minds are similar.
Well, this was a hard conversation to have with y'all. It's like you said, it was a hard week. The news was overwhelming. The response has been overwhelming, overshadowing. Thanks for having the conversation with me. I hope we make a difference.
I think even if we just make a difference in our own hearts, that counts. I think we're sitting here preaching, for lack of a better word, a willingness to be open to having conversations, to listening to each other. And I think that makes us independently better for it. And I think that sometimes has to be enough.
Kind of goes back to get the log out of your own eye before trying to get the splinter out of your brother's. Understand why you feel a certain way and understand why others may feel a certain way, and make sure that your stance is unimpeachable. And if it is impeachable, go talk to someone who feels differently than you so you can understand why it's impeachable. So that maybe you have to build a stronger argument for what you already think. Maybe you have to change what you think. Maybe you have to change how much you understand about something before you can really make a firm decision to take a solid stance on something. Because so much of what I see is, and guys, I'm guilty of this too, but just regurgitating what you hear from someone else. There's so much more that we really should be doing as individuals to understand why we feel a certain type of way.
Well, and I think that poking holes in your own argument, poking holes in your own case, and figuring out how to plug them is only beneficial to you. It only makes your stance stronger. It only makes your conviction that much more important.
Even if it means that your stance has to change.
Shifts, modifies, changes, yes. I
I
think
sure
that
don't want to have the same ideas that I had when I was 22 about a myriad of things. And if we lock that down, we're not growing into anything new.
yeah, we're just stagnant. And I don't want to be stuck here. I don't want to be stagnant in today. I want us to grow out of this into better.
We have to remember that nothing is right because I say it is.
You say that. That's really kind of funny because that was probably the one thing that as I became a mom, I did not want to repeat that my parents said, especially my dad, because I said so. Okay, give me a weird thought. I need some happiness.
Yeah, I don't know if we're going to get there with our weird thought, but hopefully our good news story
No.
will bring that to you.
Okay.
But maybe our weird thought can bring a little bit of potential hope.
Conversation.
Yeah, conversation at least, maybe a little bit lighter. And I think that there are actually kind of two questions here. What are your we've talked about on the podcast both today and in previous episodes wanting to build a better society. And some of the things that we think would be required there on a certain degree is maybe not necessarily a higher level of empathy, but a better understanding of empathy so that we can have a more reasonable level of it. So what are some universal experiences that you think everyone should have? Like, are there any types of jobs that you think every American should have to do before they can really be considered a grown-up, an adult?
Voter.
Yeah.
A voter. Interesting. Yeah. I think everybody needs service experience, service industry experience. This is what it is like to serve someone other than myself. This is what it is like to handle and deal with people who want, see, act differently than me. And I think that it gives you a better understanding of people beyond yourself. There's a selflessness that comes with serving someone else, whether that is waiting tables or working retail or being on the other end of a cold call, being the one who's doing that cold call. I mean, I think that it changes your perspective on, I think it widens your horizon, broadens your horizon of the idea that people are not all the same and that they have different needs and wants and desires and that that's okay.
I think one of the defining moments of y'all growing up was when you went on mission trips to poor communities and you were exposed to the kind of life that they lived that wasn't yours. So I would say, I think everybody needs to do some type of, and it falls in line. It's the same kind of service thing, but I think everybody needs exposure to something less than what you have. So you're grateful for what you have and you recognize for what you have and you understand that there are needs that other people have that you've never even had to think about.
Yeah, civic service, civic duty.
That we take for granted. Yeah, I think that's a really good one because I think that those two are a little bit different. Community service versus volunteering your time for someone who is less fortunate than you and being compensated for your time for people who may be more fortunate than you, I think can lead to some really different outcomes. But I also think that they are both a shining example of service can bring you such joy. When you do something for someone else, the feeling that you can get, and some people have never experienced that because they've never actually done something for someone else and seen the appreciation from the person that they're doing service for. They may also have never presented an opportunity to witness what it's like to provide service for someone who's ungrateful, and how to deal with a situation like that, and how it makes you look when you're the one being ungrateful. So I think, much along the same lines as Callie, I think everyone should have to work 6 months of service industry, waiter, bartender, door guy, whatever
Cashier.
it is. Yeah, hostess, whatever. I think everyone should have to work 6 months of retail, because those two are a little bit different. I do think that some mandatory community service would be fantastic, even if it's 1 week a year, 1 weekend a year. Hey, go and spend 1 week at a homeless shelter, volunteering your time.
So hesitate to call it community service because I think we could mess that up, but I don't know what the right word is. But
it is. It's serving your community.
It's serving a different community. I think that is what I think is the
That's
key
why I call
there.
it civic service, because I think it's serving your society. And I think that it gives you the opportunity to recognize the benefits of selflessness. There is more than me. And not only am I doing something that is benefiting someone else, I also reap benefits from that. Like Cole said, watching somebody else be grateful for your time changes your heart, expands your heart.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen y'all do things in communities that were poor. One of the 9th Ward in Louisiana, but I've also seen you do emergency response kind of stuff after tornadoes or explosions, those kinds of things. And I think when you're going to do, Cole, you said a homeless shelter or a soup kitchen, I think those are valid, and I think everybody ought to have that exposure.
Then you is important.
Yeah.
And Callie,
We
you
also
said
talked
this
about
yesterday, and I agree with you. I think everyone should have military service, even if it's not.
I was surprised by that.
I was too, a little bit. What would your
opposed.
reasons be for that, Callie?
Because again, I think it gives you two things. Number one, I think it gives you a sense of pride and worth in the value of defending your freedoms, whether they're yours or your communities, your societies. I also think that it gives you a better perspective on the value of life versus death.
I think there's a discipline component that's in there also.
I was just about to say discipline, understanding order, specifically chain of command. Hey, this person, but there are two facets to this. One, to understand that just because someone is your boss doesn't make them infallible, but they're still your boss.
And there's still a way that you have to go about addressing those situations when you don't agree with them.
Yep.
Yeah.
It helps you understand what makes a good leader, because good leaders lead through service.
Yes.
Bad leaders lead through fear or through demand.
Yeah.
I also, like you talked about, and this is both structural discipline, but also personal discipline. Taking care of your body, doing things that are challenging, that are difficult, that are hard, to learn that you can do them. Teamwork, being reliant on the people next to you, because you all have a job to do. And if one of you fails, it makes it harder for everyone else around you.
How do you do that nationally?
What do you mean?
Well, if you're talking about military service, that can be a national. If you're talking about civil service, that could be a national program that's put in place. But how do you develop that team and that?
I think we could set it up like continuing education in various careers. Hey, you need X number of hours doing this every year in order to renew your driver's license. You want to be a part of this society? These are the requirements for doing that.
Yeah.
You want to function within this society? These are the requirements that are on every single one of us to fulfill and to stand up doing, so that we can all have those experiences and share those experiences, because I think that it changes your perspective.
I mean, even if you did it where, when we're talking about the military service, maybe it's not active duty for 2 years. Maybe it's you're in the National Guard for 4. Because So you go and you spend 6 weeks going through basic training, and then you have a job specific to you that you go to the training school for, and 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks of the year, you go and you do what they tell you to. And maybe that's community service. Maybe that's going and cleaning up after a disaster. Maybe that's going and helping at a fundraiser for kids for some reason. And maybe that's going and jumping into a war zone to defend someone else who is unable to defend themselves. I think that there are some stipulations here that I would like to see when it comes to leadership around that, to say, hey, we're not just going to go throw people into the meat grinder because we have them.
Because we can.
Yeah, because we can. That's not the point. The point is to instill structure and discipline and an understanding of liberty and what that can cost.
I've also been kind of weird about, and maybe I've said this on the podcast before, I'm weird about jury duty. I think I view jury duty as an honor and as a responsibility.
Something to be taken seriously.
I was going to say that is to be taken seriously. Because I want to do a great job at jury duty, I want to show up and be open and to listen and to hear and to understand and to make smart choices and vote whichever way makes the most sense. What is reasonable? What is just? Because I want somebody to do the same thing for me. If I happen to be on the other side of that courtroom, I want somebody to be willing to do that for me. I understand that jury duty, especially in today's day and age of we're all busy all the time, I understand that it's an inconvenience, but it is still necessary. And I want to come in with an open mind and an open heart and a willingness to devote that time to somebody else, even if they have chosen to squander their choices, because someday I may be on the other side of that courtroom and I want somebody to do that for me.
Justice for you.
Yes. I think it's important. I also think that we as a society, from top to bottom, do a really bad job at valuing money, at recognizing the value of money, at recognizing the worth of money. And if there was a way that we, like I said, okay, to get your driver's license, you have to go do your continuing education of X, Y, and Z. You need to live on whatever we have all agreed minimum wages for a period of time, so you know what that is and looks like and means.
That's a big ask. That's a tough one.
That's a big ask.
I know. But I think that it would serve us all really well to have a better understanding of the ask that we're putting on other people. We, the three of us, are incredibly fortunate. We know that and we recognize that, but it doesn't end there. I can't just know that I am fortunate and call it a day. And so I think if we took some time to really look at what going to the grocery store on minimum wage looks like, I think it would give us an opportunity to better understand what it is that we're asking of people that we're enforcing that minimum wage on. I keep thinking of the woman, I can't even remember where it was. She was at some restaurant, Panera, something like that, who threw the hot soup in the other girl's face. She ordered soup. She said it was too hot. The girl was like, I'm sorry, it's soup. And so she decided the customer threw the hot soup at the employee and burned her. Would you do that if you understood customers? If you had to be on the receiving end of all of that complaining? Would it give you a different perspective?
Sure hope so. And maybe because I think to myself, how do you come to the thought that that is acceptable? And maybe I question that because I worked so long in service industry, but even before that, before working in service industry, I can't imagine that being a thought that came to my head.
Yeah. Mom, you and Pam and I talked here months and months ago now, probably over a year ago now. There was a judge in Ohio, something like that, Indiana, Illinois, somewhere, that had a situation like this. She threw a fit. I think it was at a Chipotle. The customer threw a fit and threw the food on the service worker and ended up in jail or ended up in court over it. And the judge said, okay, your punishment is to go work 30 days in a fast food restaurant, in a Chipotle, behind a counter.
That's
And
outstanding.
this judge specifically is known for having
Innovative
punishments, but the whole purpose of them is so that you can experience that same situation from the other side. And I think that that is really valuable intel.
Now I'm curious about if she did it.
She did do it. At the beginning of it, I don't think I saw an interview with her after it. I think she had just started it. But she basically came in and said, look, I'm going to keep my head down. I'm going to shut up long enough to get through this so I never have to do this again. And she was kind of a shit about it, if I remember correctly. And like I said, I think she was like a week into it when they interviewed her. I would be curious to see an afterthought, an after reaction of all of that. But at the same time, I don't care to glamorize her anymore. I don't care to add any more attention on her bad behavior, even as an outcome of this.
Think about it consciously. I try, because I worked in service industry for so long, to be very patient and kind and understanding when something doesn't go my way. Like if my order is wrong, there's no reason to respond with anger. Everybody makes mistakes. I've made mistakes. And to say, hey, I'm sorry, my order is wrong. Could you fix this for me, please? And every time I'm so sorry. Yes, let me fix that for you. Because it goes right back to that, you catch more flies with honey. And I do the same thing if I go to a bar. I try and be understanding and kind and polite, and I try and tip my servers well, especially if they provide good service. But even if they have mediocre service, I know what they're getting paid. I know the situation that they're in. And so I try and reciprocate because they're providing me a service. I am going to reciprocate and value it. I also am so much nicer now. Even when I'm really frustrated, when I call into a call center and speak to someone in customer service, and it's hard sometimes, and I have noticed even some people that I speak with at work, and I try and say the same thing. I am very frustrated with this situation that I am in. I understand that this is not your fault directly. Can you please help me to resolve this situation? And it is almost always appreciated on the other side. And I have made it a point myself when I am talking to people on the phone who say it that way, who phrase it that way, who they say, I know this isn't your fault. And I am sorry that you are the one who has to deal with this, the one that I am taking this out on. And I am now going to do everything in my power to help you because you are
building a bridge.
Well, not only that, you are validating my existence as a fellow human being.
Yep. Building a bridge for both of us to get over and get across on.
Service industry. Okay, I think everybody should have to work 6 months of service industry, 6 months of retail, 6 months in a call center, and at least 2 years of military service.
And I think that we need to revisit those things on occasion. Maybe that's
refresher courses.
Yeah, refresher courses.
Yeah.
Don't forget how hard life is. Don't make it harder for everybody else because you've forgotten.
Okay, Ma, I need some good news.
Well, I thought it was interesting that y'all talked about, some financial learning along that. And this story kind of fascinated me. It is about the Earl Monroe New Renaissance Basketball School. That's a mouthful. They call it the EMNR. And I didn't know this, but Earl the Pearl Monroe was one of the greatest basketball players of the late 90s. And he and Dan Flores created this school. It is in a severely disadvantaged area in the Bronx. And the idea there was that they could use basketball to teach school and training. But the fascinating story for me is they decided that at one point they would have these kids start a business. And so they had them put together a business plan, and they came up with, it was a clothing line for kids called Eventually. It's kind of abbreviated, but it's called because eventually they would be successful. And so at 16 and 17 years old, they developed their board and developed their presentation, and they got to go in front of this large group executives of a $31 billion global franchise and deliver their product pitch. And it just talks about how nervous they were and how hard they had to work and that they didn't have this understanding. Part of that was exposure. I mean, at one point they were granted access to get leather jackets from this really nice clothing line and do these kinds of things. But they went about education in a completely different manner than what we see. And what the kids learned was everything that they needed to learn in the process. Did they learn math? Yes. Did they learn English? Yes. But they came out with actually a business on the other side.
A richer learning experience.
A richer learning experience. And it's just fascinating to read about these kids who were super nervous about speaking in front of, in public, in front of people.
Sure.
And were they going to screw up their presentation? Were they going to miss something? And how they had to practice to do that and how they got along with it. But the success that they saw and what it meant to them individually as they came to this was just such a great story. And one of the people that they presented to said, I've been doing this in the clothing industry now for over 30 years, and I've never seen something like this. So it's just such an innovative and fabulous idea taken to an amazing realm.
I think that is an outstanding example of how education could be better. To hear something like that, to hear an organization that is taking such an innovative and intelligent approach, because I think that is probably one of the greatest failings of our existing education system, is that it in no way teaches you how to apply the things you learn in real life. It is these goofy word problems that on paper may look like a real life application, but when are you ever going to utilize algebra to figure out how many apples Jimmy has in his basket? But to actually force that out of a classroom scenario into the real world to apply what they're learning, I think has so much value. And I hope that the rest of our education system can learn from this and
takes note.
Yeah, I think that this is something that we should push for, to say, hey, we need more opportunities like this for our kids.
I'm just going to say this too. They've supported 250 students since they started. 99% of all seniors have received scholarships, not federal grant programs, but scholarships. Had
full scholarships.
Full scholarships. They had 1.8 million in scholarship money awarded to the class of 25. Not financial aid, scholarships. And they had kickboxing guys come in to show them kickboxing and to give them business pitches and teach activism, voting education. They took kids who didn't have a chance and gave them a 99% chance to do something greater.
What an opportunity. I mean, but at the same time, like Cole said, I hope that the rest of our society is taking note. It can be done. It is possible. And it doesn't have to be hard. It just requires kind of getting over that speed bump that feels like a mountain at first. Just start a little at a time.
Like charter school with a lottery system of people who want to go there.
Outstanding.
It's pretty amazing. Yeah. Good word.
Yeah. Great story, Mom.
Love you guys.
Love you guys.